Here we are. Here we are. Let's see here. I need a little bit more light. A little bit more light. We are having we're gonna have us a good day. Let's see. I'm working on my lighting here. Uh let's see. Hang on. Much better. Much better. Here we are. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about a lot of things. I want to thank you for tuning in today. We've got check. Awesome. So today we've got a lot of things we're going to be talking about. I only had 2 questions from the Patreon Club this month. And if you would like to get in on the Patreon Club, it is only $5 to join. There are different tiers. So the $10 tier every month, you will get all the benefits of the Patreon Club, but you also get access to the monthly breath tip. So I've just started releasing some of the old monthly breath tips on YouTube, and so we're going to have more and more of those come out for free. But those are all 3 years old. So I've been doing this in the Breath Club for about 3 years, where if you have the $10 tier, you get that extra little bit. So it's pretty cool. If you go to like 15, you get a free course. I mean, there's all kinds of cool things. And you're going to be the first to get my merch drop, which is coming very soon. So we've got Language of Breath merch that's coming out very, very soon. Today we're going to be, well, Mike is working. Thank you, Paul. Good to see you, brother. All right. So today we're going to be talking about some things that have been going on in the breathwork world. Actually, I've got 2 sort of controversial issues to talk about. So I want to thank Kennedy from the Breath Club, and the other person didn't give me like a regular human name. I love the name Longing for Daisies. So I want to thank you both for asking these questions. We're going to talk about these very soon. Real quick, I'd like to do a few updates first. One is that the Language of Breath Breathworker School is starting to take applications. We just opened the open enrollment. The Language of Breath Breathworker School, we do this once a year. We've had 3 amazing certifications. We do it's about a 5 or 6 month weekly Zoom. They're all recorded, so if you miss one, it's not the end of the world. But basically, I give you the best education, not just on breathing techniques, not just on mechanics, not just on CO2, not just on superventilation, not just on what happens in your brain when you do breath work, not just on what emotions are, but how everything works together and how you can create programming for your clients and how you can create your own specific offers for your clients. And whether it's a side gig or it's something you'd like to do full time or it's adding to what you already do, it's something that we've graduated people from every walk of life, therapists, personal trainers, people like me. I never thought I had any business getting into the world of health and wellness. And then here I am. I'm very, very happy to be a part of it. So open enrollment closes. So the question is, it does close. So we do close. So it closes when one of these following 2 things happens. One, once we're full. So right now, it's crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but we're already a quarter of the way full, and we just started it. We started open enrollment last week. So it's going quite well for the school. We're already 25% of the way there. So once we're 100%, we will have a waiting list once we're completely full. So even when we're full, you can still apply, and either you're on the waiting list for this 2025 class or the following year, you'll be first in line. That's what happened last year. So we had quite a few people who they signed up, they qualified, but they didn't lock it in quick enough, so they were on the wait list for the next year. So we have an overflow from last year, and we already have a lot of people that are applying again on top of that. So it's a beautiful thing, but it does mean that you shouldn't wait too long. If for some reason, as long as it doesn't fill up, so let's suppose it doesn't fill up really fast, then you'll have till February of 2025. Last year, it filled up pretty much. We were pretty much, if we weren't full, we were pretty much full by Christmas. So you've got some time probably if you need to think about it. But if you would like to talk to me or one of our faculty about our program, go to languageofbreathcollective.com, or you can go to jessecoomer.com. There's a there's a way to get a hold of me for both of those things. This is not only the most comprehensive breathwork training program, it's unique in that it really is the next step in breathwork. And I'm not just saying that because I don't know, some egotistical jerk. This is something that, especially over the last year, expert after expert after expert has come to talk to me, has come to listen to me speak, and they say it too. So we're really proud of our programming and the curriculum that we offer. So check that out if that's something you would like to add to your skill set. Or hey, some people just want to have an incredibly deep understanding of a topic and also have an amazing time. Because this year we have every year we always have an in-person training, so a capstone, so you get some hands-on. I don't believe in sending anybody out there. I think it's criminal for a lot of these breathwork. Actually, this is, hey, one of our questions for today about the crisis in the world of breathwork. I think it's criminal for a breathwork school to send a breathworker out there to really work with individuals if they haven't done some kind of like in person. Now, and I, having said that, there's always caveats. There's always, I'm not saying take them all to jail, but there are a lot. Maybe I should rephrase. There's so many benefits to having this in-person capstone that we have. So not only that, but it's a lot of fun and you get to know a lot of people. You have a lot of fun. This year we're doing it in Bryan Head, Utah. I've never been, but one of our faculty lives in that area. He's like, dude, we've got to do it here. He sent me the info and I'm like, oh my God, this is beautiful. This is absolutely gorgeous. So we're doing 4 days there in a Hilton, resort. So it's just a really fun time. Plus we're going to try to get, you learn how to do cold plunging, but we're going to try to get it so that we have all kinds of other fun excursions there as well. So you have a great time, you get an amazing education. And then on top of that, you are, you are incredibly well qualified. So having said that, that is something to look into. And if you have questions about it, you can reach out to us. Today, we are talking about the crisis in breathwork. And Kennedy sent me this question, and you'll have to forgive me, Kennedy. When it comes to the question, basically, Kennedy wanted me to just talk about the crisis in breathwork. And so the question is, Jesse, recently I've heard you just talking about this crisis in breathwork. What is that all about? Could you just talk about it? Some people ask specific questions like, hey, I'm having this trouble. I'm having this issue. What would you recommend? Other people are like, hey, what's a great way to do this or that? And so it's a question based around something I've been talking about, which is the crisis in breathwork. So we're going to get to that in just a second. Paul, is enlightenment included in the language of breath certification? Of course it is. Of course it is. When you and you'll never get sick again unless you're doing it wrong. And all these other promises, right? And you'll have immortality. And this is coming back to exactly the question or the topic that Kennedy wanted me to talk about, which is the crisis in breathwork. So no, that's the thing. I recently made a post on Instagram, just how boring breathwork that really does make the biggest difference in people's lives, in my clients' lives, in my own life, how boring it seems from the outside and how boring it is compared to some of these things that are just like, all these promises. And so we're going to talk about that. Okay. So Kennedy asked me to talk about this. What is this crisis in breathwork? Let's talk about it. So the crisis in breathwork is that it's growing. And that doesn't sound like something that would be, that doesn't sound like a problem, Jesse. The fact that it's growing sounds like it's not necessarily a crisis. Well, anytime something grows exponentially, there is generally a problem. Even in like a biological level, when you have exponential growth, it's very common that something will metastasize, something will create. There's going to be a tumor or other things that come out of this, even at a biological level. And so really exponential growth. While it is great that there is more awareness around this thing called breathwork, it is the fastest growing. Still to this day, it's been in the past few years cited as the fastest growing health modality. It is still the fastest growing health modality in the world. And that's a great thing. But as a result, we have a crisis. So what is this? I'm going to unpack. So I'll unpack this. So thank you, Kennedy, for that question or the request. The crisis is that when something is growing very quickly, you're going to have a lot of there's different aspects that happen. One is you're going to have, and this is what I think mostly it is, a lot of very well-meaning individuals who have had very positive experiences with breath work and they want to share it with the world. And hey, I was one of those people myself. Way back in 2016, whenever breathwork was not even on anybody's, I mean, we were just a speck of a skosh. If that, have you heard this term? People say skosh as like kind of like a measurement of, but we were a speck of a speck of a speck on the radar in the health and wellness world back in 2016. And then when I got into breath work back in 2012, 2013, 2014, somewhere around there, what's crazy is it's hard for me to remember exactly. You don't, and that's part of, the brain doesn't always remember exactly those dates and exactly where you learned something and all those things. But it was back in those days whenever I first got into it, and it was nothing like what it is today. It was the fringe of the fringe was breath work, and it was mostly junk information that was making spiritual claims that couldn't be substantiated or culty things. And I mean, there was a lot of things out there that were just like kind of weird. And there wasn't, while there was research on breathing and breath work at the time that you could look at, there wasn't the piles and piles of research that we have today. So, just in those past few years, almost a decade has passed, there's been a huge explosion. And when I first got into breath work, I realized, first of all, it's something I wanted to share with everyone. I also realized that it was an incredibly powerful thing that I didn't feel comfortable sharing with everyone unless I understood it better. I didn't really know what was going on. However, there is this thing, and in the language of breath, we talk a lot about unconscious biases. And I know that word, just saying those words probably triggered some people. So chill, calm down. What I'm talking about is we have unconscious biases. We do, and it's just something that it manifests in a lot of different ways. The way I'm talking about here is the unconscious bias to believe that all that you know is pretty much all that there is to know, and that if you don't know that something does not exist, it probably doesn't exist. That sounds maybe like a tongue twister, but what I mean by that is, well, and you can take it back to the research of Dunning and Kruger, which has been debated, but I still think they were really onto something. And it's basically this: when you tell a person, or when a person knows nothing about a topic, they know, right? They know that I just don't know anything about a topic. And then you give a person one or two things that, hey, here's some information about a topic. At that point, a person believes that they are far more knowledgeable than they were before. Because if you think about it, like they've just grown in their knowledge of it by it's gone from 0 to 1, which is incredible, right? That's a huge jump in in increments of knowledge. But the problem is, at that point, they're like, well, I didn't know anything about this thing, and now I know this thing about it. There can't be that much more, right? There can't be much more to this. And the reality is that there's a lot more to just about everything. And it's just a human cognitive bias that we have with information. And so, we can take this back to our primal roots. If you think about it, we want the simplest explanation for something because we want simple. We don't want to have to think about it. We don't want it to be incredibly complex, because if it's super complex, then it takes a long time to work with. And what we need is the simplest explanation of reality so we can go hunt, gather, survive, right? That is, we're built for that. I'm sorry, it is just the way we are. I'm that way. Everybody's that way. And so when I see the exponential growth of breath work, I see a lot of the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is a lot of people went out to a workshop, and I had this happen to me. Okay. So this is something, again, because I've been in this so long, I've seen these things happen just in my own life. So I would have people that would come to workshops, come to seminars and things like that. And then like a month later, I see them posting on Facebook that they're going to host a workshop or a seminar. And I knew very well whenever they came to me, they knew nothing. They didn't know anything about this thing. I had to show them the most foundational basic things and they were struggling with it. I remember I had this one guy, and he brought his friends. We did this private thing where I went through this whole methodology, and it was clear. I was teaching stuff that they'd never really had any experience with, and then a month later, the guy is, "Hey, I'm going to go lead this workshop, and I'm going to teach you all the things that I've learned." And I'm like, dude, you know, I don't think you're really ready for that. I reached out, and it wasn't me saying like anything negative about him. It was me saying, listen, you haven't seen what I've seen. You haven't experienced what I've experienced. It can get scary. You're dealing with stuff that, yes, there is an incredible upside, but anytime you have something with an incredible upside, there is an equal downside that can come from it. Your breathing is no different. Like it's crazy, but this is how we think about it. We think, oh, this thing, either it does good things or it has no effect at all. Like there can't be any side effects, and that's wrong. And if you've gotten into breath work at all, you know that the vast majority of people's struggles with anxiety and stress and things like that, when we link it back to breathing, it's not that they're not doing deep breath work sessions every day. It's that the dysfunction in their breathing is making them breathe faster than they should have to, which is adding to their stress load. And it's that they're mouth breathing, and so they're not taking advantage of all of the filtration system that they naturally could take advantage of if they would just breathe through their nose. And so you've got it can't be both ways, right? It can't just be that there's no possible side effects to this stuff, because there are. And actually, the next question we're going to get into, and I've got more to say about this. So Kennedy, hang with me. But the next question I'm going to talk about is DMT breathwork. So someone asked me about DMT breathwork. I'm going to talk about it. But so we see this incredible growth. We see people who are enthusiastic about sharing because they're good people. They're very good people. They're not grifters. They're not trying to take advantage of anybody. They're good people. And guess what? I was one of those people early on. It's just that during those days, just knowing anything about breath work made you head and shoulders above anybody else, because just knowing anything at all, now you're suddenly, you're like in the top 10% of people knowing about breath. It was a different time. It was a different time, but it was a different time back then. Now it's different, right? And the thing is, what I had to learn the hard way, and I learned this the hard way. I would do these deep breathwork sessions, a lot of circular breathing, hypoxic holds, you know the drill. And I would have people having seizures on me. And I'm like, holy crap, what's going on here? No one told me about this. Even though I took the certifications and I did all these courses and I did all this stuff, there was so much that wasn't shared, or at least wasn't known or understood. And there were some certifications that literally made the claim that even if you're breathing and you're over breathing, as long as you exhale in a relaxed way, there's no way that you can have tetany. There's no way that you're going to have any side effect of low CO2, which is ridiculous. Ridiculous. But that was and there's still certifications out there like that today. I kid you not. Those are some of the oldest certifications, to be honest. And so we know a lot more. But when it comes to the crisis and breath work, it's that there's a lot of very, very well-meaning individuals who don't know what they're doing, and they're going out there and they're having some people that have great sessions maybe, but they're also causing a lot of harm. They're not representing breath work as well as it should be represented. And as a result, there's a lot of people who are saying, okay, if this is what breath work is, then maybe it's not for me. In addition to that, there are grifters out there. There are people who take advantage of others using breath work. And let me tell you what this is about. And this had to do, I've learned this in many different ways, but I'll just give you this particular example. I was writing my second book, The Language of Breath, which is by far, Both of my books I'm really proud of, but the Language of Breath is a book that and the thing is, I'm going to have to update the book. I that book I wrote, I finished writing the book 1 year before it actually was published, which was about 1 year ago. I've learned a lot since then. Like, you never stop learning, but it is by far, I think, both of my books were exactly what the world of breathwork needed at the time. Um, so so when I was writing that, my first editor, she said, I do have some experience with breath work. And I'm like, great, great. What kind of breath work did you do? And she's like, well, I'm not even really sure what it was called, because when I was a kid, I was raised in my family, we were in a cult, and breath work was one of the things that they used in this cult. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. I mean, I felt kind of awkward, right? I also felt like, I don't know if you are the right person, to edit my book. Or maybe you are. Maybe it was a perfect thing so that she could see that, that not all breath work is like that. But what they do, okay, so what a lot of, and this is not just in breath work, but this is also in a lot of other methodologies, a lot of other things that will change your consciousness. So whether it's through drugs, whether it's through breath work, whether it's whatever it's through, you're going to do something and it changes your conscious. It puts you into a non-ordinary state, and it generally feels good either during or after. There is some kind of a feeling that you get that will feel somewhat familiar, but also different. And then they're the first one to swoop in and say, let me tell you what this is. And you can fill in the blanks if a person doesn't know what's really happening. I talk about what's happening in the Language of Breath book. There are some very good actors in the world of breath work right now. But there are a lot of people who are either repeating some of the older stuff that we know is nonsense now, or they are adding their own things into it so that you can believe them and, follow them and make them your spiritual guide and all these other things. So there are some people, and I would, even though maybe they do believe 100% in what they say, I still count that as a bad actor. I still count that as a person who has ulterior motives. I'm going to give you an experience instead of giving you the scientific explanation. I'm going to give you this explanation that I'm coming up with. We're talking to the aliens, or you're channeling, spirit, or some kind of a thing that is non-falsifiable that I want you to believe, so that you can join my group and you can look at me as some kind of a guru. And so that is another group that I see in the world of breathwork, Kennedy, whenever, and again, thank you for this question, whenever I'm talking about the crisis in breathwork. Lastly, maybe not lastly, but the last one I'm going to talk about with regards to this, because I've been talking about it for a little while. There are a lot of people who will make claims like, if you just give me $10,000, I am going to teach you to become a breath worker and you're going to be a millionaire. Because look, just so you know, I'm a millionaire. And I did it through breath work, and I'm going to teach you how to be a millionaire. All you got to do is give me, $10,000, 100,000, whatever, thousands and thousands and thousands. Like, you should have to, here's another thing. You should have to pay well for your certification. If it's like $125 and you found it on Instagram, pass. All right. In order to provide good service, a certification program has to charge. So if it's too cheap, it's probably not any good. But there are these other folks that are like, they're giving you pretty cheap instruction. They're giving you a lot of claims. You give them all this money, and then they're promising, hey, you're going to be this millionaire whenever you take my course or whatever. And I'm going to certify you, and you're going to make, $10,000 a month or $20,000 a month or something like that. And they focus so much on the money that it sort of tricks you into thinking, well, all breath work is probably the same. What I really need is a business model. And so there's a lot of that out there now, a lot. And they're really good at marketing. They're really good. And the thing is, they're charging so much they can afford to put a ton of advertisements on there. So if you are on Instagram or YouTube and you're following a lot of breath workers, if you're following me on Instagram, you're probably being fed a lot of these ads. And I've spoken at conferences with some of these people. And that's how I didn't really get to know them on a personal level because I didn't really want to. I listened to them speak and I'm like, man, they are getting it so wrong on so many foundational levels. Yet because they say it with confidence, everybody seems to believe them. And that's something that we do as another cognitive bias. It's a problem. We don't have a BS ometer. And so what we do is we will listen to a person who seems like they know what they're talking about. They'll say it with a lot of confidence, right? If you don't believe me, that's fine. Go read my books. Check the bibliographies out. Like I can cash my checks, but we have a lot of folks out there that are just making a lot of claims and they sound true, or they are claims that you want to be true, or they are claims that other people are saying and they're all wrong. But if everybody's saying something that's wrong, oftentimes we're like, well, everybody's saying it, so maybe it's right. And that's not really how the truth works. So those are three groups that are out there and causing what I call the crisis in breath work. I don't like being negative, so I apologize, but you should know better. And I want everybody to be informed on this, especially in the Patreon Breath Club. So thank you so much for that question, Kennedy. Paul has a comment. He said, one thing that has bothered me lately is the idea that 10 hyperventilating breaths in water is not hyperventilating in water. Yeah, right. So hyperventilating, this leads right into DMT breathwork. Hyperventilating. So basically over breathing. There's so many ways we can describe this. But for the longest time, if you were to say breath work, actually, when I first got into breath work, I didn't realize the actual definition of the word as it was being used in the field. I just came into breath work believing if you're working with your breath, you're doing breath work. Like I didn't understand any of this, like the jargon. And so I just assumed that any breathing technique, no matter what it was all breath work. And in my first book, actually, guess what? In my first book, A Practical Guide. And actually, I'm coming out with a second edition next year on this. And I'm really excited to come out with the next edition. I'm going to highlight some really awesome names in breathwork. I need to balance what I just said with some positive. There's some really great names in the world of breathwork that I want to highlight. And guess what? They also teach certification programs that I think are very, very high quality breathwork certification programs. And the thing is, and I know this might sound cheesy, I'm going to get off on a tangent here. I appreciate you hanging out with me. I know this might sound cheesy, but breathwork has changed my life in such a profound way that, like, yes, I need to make a living, and my time is valuable, and I don't mind charging for it. Okay, and if you don't like that, that's fine. You can you get what you pay for, and you go get the free guy. But I will say this: even these people who have what we might consider competitors in the field, because unless you're just infinitely rich, you're probably not going to certify with me and then go to them and them and them and them and get all these different certifications. You're probably looking for which one's right for you. Okay. I'm still going to put them in my book and say that these are people that I trust and that you can trust too. And that was the reason why I wrote this in the first place. It was the book I wish was out there. And in this book, I talk about, what is breath work, for especially, and it came out in 2020. So this was whenever it was still a speck of a speck of a speck on the radar. So getting back into what I was talking about, when it comes to over breathing, when it comes to I call it superventilation. Sometimes we call it hyperventilation. Sometimes we call it circular breathing. There's a million different ways people describe it, but that was what breathwork once was. So that was breathwork. Any other breathing techniques were just breathing techniques. there was breath work, and that was basically breathing for the purpose of a psychedelic experience. I don't think that's a great way to look at breath work. I don't think that's, I think those are fantastic things, and I guide people through them, and I do that at my retreats. Actually, hey, I'm going to announce it. I'm going to be in Sand Valley in January. That's Sand Valley Retreat Center, that's just outside of Madison, Wisconsin, and that is January 17, 18, 19, and 20. That's going to be one hell of a cool retreat because we're going to cut holes in the ice. We're going to do sauna in sub-zero temperatures. It's going to be crazy. Anyway, so I'm going to be doing that. But when it comes to breath work, there's breathing for for that purpose. But every breath you take is both sending and receiving a message within this relationship that is you. And I know that might sound a bit woo, but really what we are as human beings are far more profound than the metaphors that we normally use, which are, hey, you're this machine. I want to control my emotions. I want to control this response. There's so many people out there looking for control, control, control. And that's what I was looking for. But what we really are is this relationship. And so as you go through your day and you observe physical sensations, as you observe your breathing naturally, your breathing will naturally start to shift and change depending on a lot of unconscious processes that are happening. These are messages. These are things to start to interpret and say, okay, this is not something other than me. This is not my machine. This is not my body that's doing it. This is me. This is all me. And I'm interfacing and I'm in relationship with myself. And I know it might sound a little weird. I don't know. Does it sound weird? I don't know. I don't think it's too weird. I think it's pretty profound. So at the end of the day, every aspect of breathing, whether you're doing it on purpose or whether it's a trained response that you've done purposefully getting there, you're always interfacing with breath. And so, yeah, anyway, I don't know how I got off on this tangent. I got to get into this next question because at the next hour, we are going to be doing breath work in the Breath Club. If you're not a part of the Breath Club, you should be. It's only $5 to join, and you get access to my full catalog of breathwork sessions. And hey, and you'll be invited to our Zoom session. We're going to do a breathwork session at the next hour. And then if you're in the $20 or higher tier, you get to ask me any question you like, and I answer it live today, or we do it monthly. There's other tiers. There's like one of the $15 tier and above gets a free online course that I put out. And then you also get the access to the monthly breath tip. So monthly breath tip is the $10 and above. Anyway, take a look. Anyway, let's talk about DMT and breath work. Longing for Daisies asks, basically wanted me to talk about it. So let's get into it. So when it comes to DMT breathing, this is one of those things that you'll hear about a lot in the world of breath work. We're going to do some DMT breathing. And what's interesting and what you may notice is that it normally resembles a lot of the hyperventilation breath work that you see. One of the things that I do guide in some of my retreats, I do take people through DMT breathing. This is not a technique that I teach or guide lightly. In fact, for me to teach it to someone, I need them to be there and to be present while I'm teaching it. Very few people are willing to travel around with me just to learn this technique. And that is because I don't want to just show you and just teach you, hey, this is how to do it. You breathe in, you breathe out, you hold, you do these things. And that is because there is a very high percentage of chance. And very high, I don't mean like 90% chance, but I mean, you have about I would say a 1 in 10 chance that when a person does DMT breathing and they do it appropriately, that they're going to have a seizure. And no one wants to talk about seizures, but breath work has no side effects. It's only good. It's good. But anything that's good and anything that's powerful can have side effects. That's just, I'm sorry. It's just reality. I'm drinking some water right now. I can drown in it. I can also drink so much water that it kills me. You can die of overhydration. And the same can be said about breath work. So while DMT breath work, there are some techniques that have been shown to change brain scans in ways that resemble when a person is taking an exogenous dose of DMT, right? So we don't, it's very difficult. Like it would be hard for us to just have a snapshot of the brain while a person is doing DMT breathing, or while a person is secreting DMT and say, oh, was that chemical right there, DMT? But what we can do is we can compare brain scans of people that we know for a fact, okay, this person is taking DMT, and then compare it to people who are doing different styles of breath work. And the style of DMT breath work that I offer, it seems as though the brain scans are very, very similar. So much so that many people have made the claim, okay, yes, we are actually able to endogenously produce DMT via this breathing technique. So yes, it exists. Is it something? So why would I use it? Maybe that's a good thing to jump onto, longing for Daisy. So thank you so much for just asking about it. Why might I use DMT breathing? So do I? First of all, hey, I know how to get DMT in my brain. Why do I? I must do this every day, right? No, I don't do this. I hardly ever do this technique, even though I've known how to do this for almost a decade. I've guided I don't know how many people through it. I've done it a lot myself. Why don't I do it every day? Well, I reserve DMT breathing for times whenever I have a decision to make, for when I'm going through a difficult time, for when basically when a non-ordinary state will be useful to me. I don't just say, well, I'm just going to get messed up, Hey man, let's do some DMT. I'm going to use this purposefully. And that's I think so important. And you see it in plant medicine, you see it in a lot of these things where it starts off, hey, I'm going to use this purposefully. I'm going to try to get something out of this that would be meaningful and in a positive thing. But then it turns into this thing where it's just about getting high, because it does feel really good. And yes, you do have out of this world experiences. I've experienced times where I feel like I'm flying or floating or falling through the floor, surrounded by angels. I've heard singing. Yes, it is a very profound state. It's something that I try to just reserve for specific times. And I will say this, it's difficult to do on your own. It's so much easier to do when you're guided through it, as opposed to doing it yourself, because a lot of these techniques, if you've ever tried these really altered state techniques, a lot of them they require a lot of heavy breathing for long periods of time, and that can be tiresome, that can really wear you out. And then it also requires contraction of certain muscles, it requires certain breath holds, and a combination of these things. And when you do a lot of heavy breathing for a long period of time, you start to lose track of time, you start to lose track of everything, you start to have these altered state experiences anyway. And then before you know it, you kind of just forget, and then you wake up later, maybe you pass out, you're like, what did I, so it's nice to have a person guide you through. So I am in a position where I'm very rarely the person being guided. Normally I'm the person on the other. I'm the facilitator most of the time for these. um and one of the most important things about DMT breath work that a lot of times is overlooked is the need for integration. So integration is the only thing that makes any of this worthwhile. Integration is the only thing that makes any kind of psychedelic experience meaningful. Yes, it might be fun, it might be enjoyable, pleasurable, it feels good, and all those things. But for you to actually take some kind of meaning from this altered state and bring it back to your life in a useful way, it means you have to have some time to integrate. And it means you need a process by which you can do that. So DMT breathwork is a great catalyst for change, or for looking at the world or your situation or your lot in life or the whatever it is in a new non-ordinary way. But it also requires some quite a bit of time of reflection, meditation, and introspection as to what can I take from this. And actually, this is one of the reasons why I prefer recommending DMT breathwork to a person rather than saying take, for instance, we call it plant medicine now, right? Rather than taking psychedelics and things like that, because in many cases, whenever you take a psychedelic or take something that is incredibly strong, incredibly, it's just this huge thing, and you're like, oh my god, yes, you might have had amazing experiences, yes, you might have had aha moments, but I've done enough psychedelics to know that when you go insanely deep with these experiences, it's very difficult to bring anything of use back into your life. That's, to me, that's why we have these things. That's why DMT breathwork is a powerful tool that I do guide people through. And I will be guiding DMT breathwork at Sand Valley in January. So I guess that's why I brought that up. So the integration is so important, and that is why it should be at the forefront. This should be the goal. I'm going to approach this session with intention. I'm going to try to get something out of this in a purposeful way, and I'm going to spend the time to do that. DMT breathwork is, you get an incredible experience, but it's short and it may not be as intense as exogenous drugs. Okay. So the beauty behind that is that people seem to be able to take more away from that experience than some kind of far out there thing. Not saying they're not taking things that from like doing mushrooms or doing like ayahuasca or whatever like that. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that you can do the DMT breathing. You can have this powerful aha moment. You can have these profound insights. You can start on this new journey, and within a matter of 20 minutes to 30 minutes later, you're perfectly back into the realm of the real world. You can drive. You can operate heavy machinery if that's something you want to do. You go swimming. You're perfectly fine, as opposed to dedicating large amount of time. I guess the other thing is I'm a dad, so I just don't have time to do drugs. I just don't have time. I myself, if I have a couple beers on the weekend, that is as far as far off the rails as I can afford to go, because for better or worse, I'm an incredibly responsible person. And I say that because if you're a very responsible person, you probably suffer from rumination. That's been a thing that I've always suffered from, and that led me to take drugs when I was younger. So for better or worse, that responsibility aspect, I'm trying to use that in a positive way. So, oh man, we got all kinds of comments here. And those were the two questions I got. Thank you so much for being in those tiers. Longing for Daisies and Kennedy, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let's see. I'll and if you would like me to answer your questions in these deep ways, and have discussions, topics on these things. Again, there is a tier in the Breath Club you can join. You get access to pretty much everything. Like there's all kinds of stuff. I'm even starting a new YouTube channel where it's just me, like you're breathing with me. So I'm actually doing the breath work on camera with you. Most of my breath work I don't do like that, but I'm starting a new YouTube channel like that. If you're in the Breath Club, you're already getting those videos now. So join the Breath Club. Let's see. Paul, let's see. One thing is bothering me. Okay, you already did that one. The next one, I do like superventilation. I still think there is a villain twist we can add to the opposite. There is certainly more to it than superventilation, and how you do it matters. There's so many ways you can superventilate. There's so many ways, and you're doing so many things. One of the things we cover in the certification program is all of the different mechanisms that are in play as you do superventilation and how you can affect them. And I really hate the metaphor of a machine, but just now I feel like here's a good metaphor. The knobs and the dials and the things, like how your session, if you can create a session to affect exactly, or at least approximately, how you're affecting these mechanisms, that's one of the things we cover. So, Mark Shepard, breath before and post pregnancy. Yes, definitely. When you do breath before and post pregnancy, um, one of the things that now, there are specifically breathwork techniques that are designed for pregnancy, Lamaze being one. There's also hypnobirthing. If you've ever heard of hypnobirthing, it's kind of a variation. It's next generation. They have this, it's kind of like J breathing or something. Like, I forget. I looked into it for a while. I had some people that I knew that were like, I had a million kids. Here's the thing. I love people who are having a million kids. At least the ones that I know are fantastic. And I guess if you're if you're an asshole, don't I'm teasing. No, the thing is, these friends that I have, they're like the best people in the world, and you got to be, I think, to have lots and lots of kids and to be good parents, you just have to be a saint. You have to be like on your way at least. Anyway, but they were asking about hypno breathing, so I did a deep dive into hypno breathing and or hypnobirthing or J breathing. I forget the names of those now. So do a weird Google search where it's like J breathing, hypnobirthing. There's some, and I think there's some free resources on the web on how to do those things. Now, having said that, I've never guided people through that. So I'm not sponsoring or I'm not promoting those, but there are some sources out there. Lamaze is one that has been shown. The reason why people tend to use it is because it does help a person, if nothing else, take their mind off of the sheer tearing and all the damage that's happening to the poor woman's body at the time. Thank you, mothers. Thank you to my mom. This poor woman was in labor for like a day, like not just hours, like for a whole day. So thank you, Mom. Thank you to all the mothers out there. We wouldn't be here without you. And thank you for putting up with that. It's just a beautiful thing. One of the things I will say, Mark, though, I would recommend during pregnancy, one of the things you want to do is be as calm as you can. So there is research on and there's in many different ways you can sort of synthesize that research. There's ultimately you want mommy to be as calm and as carefree as possible. You want to try to help her avoid high stress and things like that, because there are theories that can influence the mother's the internal environment, and that would influence the baby in a negative way. And of course, it can lead to complications, things like that, possibly as well. Let's see, before and post breathing. I mean, before and after breathing, the calm is the key. And if you're a dad, or if you've ever known a pregnant woman, or if you, I tell you what, let's just go to the next step. If you've ever known a mother, right? So pregnancy is hard enough, but then whenever the baby's outside of the body and it's like, hey, at all times, I could possibly die. I'm going to fall on something, or I'm at any moment I could just jump off of things. I tell you what, some of you guys know my wife and I, we did foster care, and we had these two little girls, and of course we also adopted later on. We love kids, but they seem to have no fear sometimes, and they will just, so mom needs to stay calm. And there's even some research that shows that when that the mother's state, it comes out, a lot of things come out in breast milk too. So if she's breastfeeding, she wants to stay as calm as possible. So basically, do anything that helps her to stay calm. There's no magical technique, maybe, that I wouldn't say there's any magical technique that's going to do that the best. Have her take the language of breath course. When you learn about how to interpret signals from your unconscious, when you learn how to make that better connection, you're going to stay calm. You're not as flappable. You're not as botherable, maybe, if that's a word. And that is going to help mom a lot, especially in those first few months when sleep is not something she's going to get much of, unless she's one of those lucky moms. There are the lucky moms out there. And the dads, I was not one of those lucky dads. But yeah, so anything that can help her stay calm. because we want her sleeping better. We want her feeding better. We want her to stay as calm as possible. And this is also going to help with the bonding. This is going to help with seeing everything better. And it's going to help dad. It's going to help the whole family to be able to bond better because mom is going to be happier and feel safer, right? We're really wanting to help her to feel safe and supported, and slow functional breathing is going to be very important for that. So, there are things that there are some techniques, again, like I said, that people do recommend as they're going into labor, um, as they're going into those things. But ultimately, it's hard to beat. It really is hard to beat slow, low, through your nose breathing, and that is just generally, resonance. Yeah, Mark, that would be a fantastic one. If she's in the breath club, just say, hey, go do the language of breath focused heart resonance frequency breathing session, or just have her do it, because that right there, calm her down. It's good for whatever's good for mom's good for the baby. So thank you for that question. I'm just going freestyle, but I gotta stop this, because here in the next hour, we're going to have us a breath party, and I got to get the music ready. Last month we did John Hopkins, which I've been doing a lot of breath work to John Hopkins music. So I've been enjoying that a lot. Let's see here. Coquelicot says it's essential to let go. The more we want control, the more we tend to lose it. Yes, and yeah, I see where you're coming from. That what's an interesting thing about that is that you're never going to be able to have control, though. So, and I know that sounds weird, and it's like, okay, you're giving up. No, it's not. It's a team. You are not the operator. You are not the operator of this machine. You are at best the co-pilot. At best, you're not even sitting the pilot. You are the co-pilot at best. And it's too much to explain right now, but you are a partnership between conscious and unconscious processes, and ideally the best thing you can possibly do, read my book, take the online course is really, it takes you step by step. The best that we can do is form a better team, and then we can depend on ourselves. Then you don't even have to worry about control, because you can rely on yourself. And that's the state that we want to be in. Thank you so much for that comment. And Eric made it late, but hey, Eric, brother, stay around. We're going to breathe together. Ayahuasca, Paul says ayahuasca is definitely something that feels like it is too much after ceremony to integrate. Yeah, I mean, in most cases, I would say, to be honest, I've had a lot of psychedelic experiences. I've never done ayahuasca, but I did a lot of magic mushrooms. I did a lot of LSD back in the 90s, and I did it with intention. I was really as much intention as I could have as a teenager, and as and then in the early 2000s too, as a college student. I was one of those weird philosophical, teenagers and college undergrad guys, and I was really looking for truths. I was really trying to get something out of it, and I can't say I really got a lot out of it, to be honest. I did feel the sense of oneness with the universe, and I felt like we were all connected, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. But I got a lot more out of breath work than I ever did psychedelics. What do you think about air purifiers? Hey, they're not bad. Go for it. You did LSD in the 70s, Eric? I don't know. I assume it was the same. Every weed is stronger, but I don't know. Anyway, don't do drugs. Anyway, guys, thanks so much. Yes, the Q&A is always available in the Breath Club, so you can watch the whole thing. JR, thanks for being here. And if you didn't make it, I had like one or two good jokes, didn't I? Maybe one or two. Anyway, we had a good time. Thanks for being here. If you're not a part of the Breath Club, it's only $5 to join. And even if you just join for the breath party that we're about to have, that's $5 to be able to join a live breath party. So, but you also get access to everything else. And if you go higher tiers, you get more things like the monthly breath tip, access to one of my online courses, the ability to ask any question you like, and I will riff on it, or I will give you exact instructions on live YouTube every month. So thanks so much for being here. I will see you guys. If you're in the Breath Club, I'll see you in just a minute. Go ahead to the Breath Club in Patreon and just click on that Zoom link. I'll be over there in a minute. If you're not in the Breath Club, join us. We're a lot of fun. All right, guys, have a great month.